Welcome to the Autonomic Homeostasis Activation Podcast. I'm Tom Powles.
And I'm Ruth Lorensson. We'll be unpacking what it looks like to activate your brain to holistically manage stress and trauma to facilitate homeostasis.
Being free to experience wellness in body, mind, and spirit.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started. Well, Tom, we're here again talking about wellness in this new series, the Fundamentals of Wellness. I'm so excited. I've loved the last couple of conversations that we've had. But yeah, let's start us off today. What are we going to be talking about?
Well, interestingly, I think and I hope wellness and illness.
Yeah.
Because I guess the way that I would begin to talk about it is that we can't really appreciate wellness if we don't have a perception of what seems like illness, but is not actually illness.
Interesting. Go on, tell me more.
Okay. So when there is a lack of homeostasis, there is a dysfunction. We have accident or injury. Or and that could be in body, mind, or spirit. There is a dysregulation that occurs, a disruption of homeostasis, which is stable, optimized, hopefully, or at least life.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, you said it's a lack of homeostasis. So we know that not all of the listeners right now have tracked with us.
Yes.
So, you said dysregulation. Just talk a little bit about homeostasis. Like, can you just share a little bit so that we know, because this is so important to understand homeostasis in terms of wellness and illness, right?
Yep.
So can you just what happens when we're in optimal homeostasis? What is that?
So homeostasis is life. J. Scott Turner quote. I love that. So homeostasis is a stable, steady state that is either in that or is restored to that neurobiologically. It's like your core temperature remains around 98.6.
So that is homeostasis in my temperature.
That is homeostasis. Now, if you get hypothermia, your brain technically could, but probably not quickly enough or as quickly as we could heat up the body to restore that or the circulation, things like that. Homeostasis is the stable, steady state within a dynamic disequilibrium.
And this is important.
There's always change happening.
Yeah, because I think this is important. Homeostasis isn't static. It is, it's like the temperature. Right. Actually, it's almost my body is constantly tweaking itself. So, when I go outside and suddenly it's right now it's, freezing here in Colorado, my body will be...
It makes all sorts of involuntary adjustments.
Absolutely.
To maintain that.
To maintain the homeostatic state.
Or to restore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, for example, in temperature, that's a great example to illustrate it. If it's cold outside, the hairs on your body will begin to stand up, providing an insulating layer of air on your body. This is the same principle that happens with animals and their fur. It's an insulating layer, and literally the hairs on your arms will stand up to provide that. The heat in your blood, it will retreat deeper into the body so that the heat is not lost.
And this is all
homeostatic activity.
Yeah, so our whole body is in optimal state is all, and I love that kind of those words, this dynamic disequilibrium, because it isn't static. It is constantly moving. It's constantly changing. It's constantly adjusting, but for one aim to have this homeostatic state.
Right.
And life. And it's life. It's how we live, and that can be in our bodies like temperature,
neurobiological.
But then it also can be applied to our minds and spirit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's a part of that too. And so if it gets cold enough, we start to shiver and we start to shake. Why? Because it generates heat and we burn calories. The opposite homeostatic activity occurs when it's hot outside. We start sweating. The blood comes to the surface of our body and the heat is dissipated. We are functionally evaporative coolers. And any air blowing over us with that perspiration that is picking up the heat from the body, because the blood is now up near the surface of the body and the hairs will lie flat so that there is no insulating layer and the wind and air can blow. Now think of that as extending to every single molecule in your body. How much water is in a cell? Things like that. So how does this all relate to wellness and illness? A lot of those things that the brain will engage in that are restorative or healing, that promote wellness, have become pathologized. Why? Because we don't like them and they're uncomfortable. And so the assumption implicitly, and now in many ways, is that anything out of the ordinary and normal might be a representation of illness.
Yeah.
Think about when you were a child. Hopefully someone communicated this, probably a parent, that when you had a cut or a scrape and it was healing, it would itch.
And it does.
And it does itch.
And you've got to not itch that scab off.
Don't itch that. Don't scratch that itch. Why? Because it's healing. Children know this. They're taught that. Adults teach them that. But how often do you have an itch and you scratch it?
Quite often.
Because I don't like it and it feels good. What's happening with the itch is that is your sensory awareness of something called neuronal pruning. Neurons communicate with other neurons by way of the synapses on the end. Think of a synapse as something that connects one thing, the neuron, potentially to another neuron. And when we learn new information, synapses connect and they allow the transfer of information along the way. Well, some of that information that gets passed along is traumatic.
Yeah.
And in that moment and in that space, that's real important information. But eventually what happens is that the brain doesn't want that to be there. And neuronal pruning, like a gardener will prune a plant, neurons will get pruned, the synapses. And literally a glial cell, which is the other type of brain cell, will literally digest the synaptic connection so that information can no longer pass through. You follow that?
Yeah.
When it does that, you experience an itch.
I'm like, I'm starting to itch now. Like, it's too hard not to. Yeah, interesting. And also, Tom, so that happens with things that we learn and then things that we know automatically that we need to unlearn. And I'm thinking here of a couple of instances, but I had, as you know, I had a car accident in March, which at the time, it was an illegal left turn. Someone whizzed through a stop sign. Both cars were smashed up. At the time, thank goodness, no one appeared hurt. I had a bit of whiplash. But what transpired for me many months later was an MRI scan, and it was actually very serious for me. I had spinal cord injury on my neck, discs. I need to have spinal surgery. This is only 10 weeks ago now, 8 weeks ago. So I had 3 discs replaced, spinal surgery, which no one wants to go through. But actually, I'm very grateful for neurosurgeons and to be at this side of it.
Yes.
However, I just literally came back from my post-op appointment 8 weeks, and my neurosurgeon said to me, I want you to know that this next year of your life is going to be a roller coaster because you will experience pain because nerves have died, Ruth, with the spinal cord compression. And amazingly, they grow back.
Yeah.
But as they grow back, you will experience pins and needles. You will experience burning. You will experience numbness. But actually, instead of it's kind of not a sign that they're dying. It's a sign that they're growing.
Yes.
Which I think is really amazing. And so for me, obviously, it's so helpful to know that information, because most people panic after a surgery like that, thinking, oh no, has it gone wrong, right?
Exactly.
But the other part of it, Tom, that I wanted to bring up with the learning and unlearning thing, I've noticed, and I'm still not here yet, but I've probably got some PTSD on driving. And every time I drive past on my right a lane with a stop sign, especially if a car, you know how they like whiz up and it looks like they're not going to stop, but then they stop. Yes. If they go really fast, my brain is going, danger, danger, danger. And I know, and I'll probably do this with AHA soon, yes. But I need to unlearn that, because there's something that's been formed there out of fight and flight, that out of that trauma, that is like seeing that as danger, which of course I do, because it did happen, but that was then, and this is now. And the majority of people who are driving will actually stop at a stop sign. But I've noticed that about me. I'm just like slightly panicking or nervous as I'm coming to those junctions, or at least more cautious. But I know, I was thinking about it because I was driving here today, and I was thinking, I need to unlearn this. That's it, almost like what I thought. Yeah.
Can intervene. And if it engages in the neuronal pruning, so that message stops going through, which is the kind of thing that can happen during an AHA session, because people will invariably report things like itching and twitching and tingling, changes in breathing, changes in optic nerve activity, seeing colors and shapes, changes in body temperature, which can be very generalized. Again, thermal regulation, what we were describing with the change in the temperature externally, but it'll do that internally too. And like a fever with an infection, that serves a purpose. We don't want to get rid of that. Now, we don't want it to get catastrophic and a nuclear meltdown with a too high a temperature. But to get rid of all these kind of things is to intervene negatively in wellness.
Yeah, and I think that there's something, so what you just brought up I think is really interesting. So there's something like when you actually are sick, you get a fever, right? So that is true, right?
Yes.
And if you have something wrong with you, there can be pain. Like when I was driving in that first accident, I went into fight and flight. My nervous system kicked in, and that was appropriate. I should have been in that situation, because there was an actual...
And that's homeostasis.
Yeah, and there was an actual danger to well-being. Yep. But the problem is when, like now, there isn't an actual threat.
No.
So the problem is when something that maybe was an actual threat lasts and stays, and, you know, and then we perceive pain or itching or drivers or whatever it might be as this threat, instead of actually I'm okay, I can rest, this is actually my body is in homeostasis.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Is acting to restore it. It just frequently does it in ways we don't like. Pain is a way the brain can signal the body to create new cells where there's been injury. We don't like pain. We have often it's been rewarded and reinforced to think that pain is an indicator that something is wrong. No, something is being set right. Something is being restored to normal function.
It's so funny, actually, because...
So with itches, I don't scratch itches.
Yeah, and I remember...
just observe them. And if it may be something that the body is reactive to, I may touch it, but I don't scratch itches anymore. I just observe them and say, unless there's something that is harming my body and that epidermal layer is reactive to it, thanks, brain. I don't necessarily like them, but I appreciate the things that are uncomfortable, a level of discomfort, because I know that my brain is engaging in homeostasis. It is engaging in wellness. So where wellness and illness are concerned, we often mistake things that are a part of wellness as illness. And they aren't.
That's fascinating.
And then, because we think of them as indicators of illness, not the process of restoring wellness, it simply increases the impact negatively on our body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, of course it does. And as I'm listening to you, I'm almost kind of empathizing with our listeners right now, because I can imagine them listening to this and thinking, wow, okay, but how? Like, how do you change from that when we're so programmed? But I just want to encourage any listeners out there that actually, in my experience of AHA and conversations with Tom for many years now, we've talked about this over and over and over again. And there's ways of change, like you've changed the way you respond to an itch now.
Yep.
When I came out of surgery, I was in my neck brace, and I've obviously got an inch scar, incision scar on my neck. And I remember, this is in the early days, I think it was week 1.5 or something. And I remember waking up one morning thinking, oh my gosh, my incision scar's itching. And immediately I said to myself, my body is healing itself.
Yes.
And that's the difference. And then instead of going, oh no, what's wrong? Is there something wrong? And getting into a complete stress over it, I was actually able to partner with my body in its pursuit of homeostasis. Yes. And so I think I wanted to say that, because I think I wanted to express how it actually how knowing this.
Yes.
And there's times where, I forget it and I have to retell myself, or I get stressed out over something. But the more and more you know this, understanding, and there's discernment there as well, for sure. Like you say, if you're allergic to something, you're itching, you want to know that, right? And figure that out. But the more you know this, the more you can respond, and the more it keeps you in that optimal homeostasis, the place of wellness, rather than sending you spiraling into illness.
Into the world of illness, when it isn't illness to start with. It's just wellness manifesting in a way we don't like, and we've learned to pathologize, but it's not that happening at all.
And interestingly, with AHA, and if you're just tuning in now with this, you'll get to know about AHA. And I mean, in the last episode, we talked about the AHA protocol for wellness, right? And we're going to go into it more and more and more. But with AHA, a session with AHA, Tom, I know that when you've, like you said, that people will, as their AHA is really about activating the brain to optimize homeostasis in the body, mind, and spirit. And what people do get those sensations. And what you found is the people who've gone with them and not interfered and allowed it to happen, you see this swinging right in from these fight and flight patterns into the parasympathetic nervous system, where there is this kind of, I mean, I know we could have podcast sessions till the cows come home on how many people after a session, cry and say, oh my gosh, I haven't felt this peaceful for
and just
so
a
long.
Profound sense of wellness and peace and calm and well-being. Yes, because that's what the brain is capable of doing. Frankly, we are not with our mind.
But you've always said AHA works for, I don't know how much percent.
98 out of
98, but
100.
the 2% are the ones that fight those feelings.
They interfere.
And they think it's pathology. They think there's something wrong. And that's where they stay more in that illness space and it's like their body is wanting them to be well. but we can actually stop our bodies get into that place of homeostasis. Would you say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we do all the time. A lot of illness is that. It is a maladaptive way that we attempt to cope with stress and trauma by interfering in and intervening in these natural homeostatic processes.
And I think one of the things that's hard about it is because, and again, this goes back to what we talked about in the first episode about how wellness is holistic, mind, body, spirit. And when we are not embracing a holistic mindset, whether that is mind, body, spirit, or whether that is the fact that we are interconnected with other people and our environment, then when we separate things out, like I think the physical, I remember this from years ago, it's so hard physical sensations feel hard to get over and think that they're okay when we've separated the body away from the mind. And, when we're holistic and we think, oh, of course, stress can cause physical symptoms. We know that. But when you're experiencing the physical symptom, it's so strong and it feels physical. So how is this to do with my mind or my body or my spirit or my stress levels? I think that's why people struggle with it.
Oh, absolutely.
So
it's been rewarded and reinforced to see so many things that are restorative of well-being as indications that something is ill, that something is not operating well. And the very things that the brain itself in these involuntary neurobiological activities engages in that are restorative, because we've observed in the AHA sessions them being restorative, but that's not been the predominant perception and paradigm. It's that something is wrong. There's a whole raft of medical diagnoses that are indicating that there is something happening that is pain or whatever it is in some part of the body. There's no medical reason for it. And so we give it this diagnosis of something that just means, yeah, there's something weird going on in that part of your body. There's no reason for it. Here's your diagnosis. I already knew that. But I have a diagnosis now for it. All sorts of things. And the brain is persistent in wanting to engage in homeostasis because it's life. And the more we interfere with it, the more it is simply going to persist in doing it. And it's just, okay, you want to take it there? I'll go higher. Why? Because this will restore. And then the very restorative things like itching and pain and that sort of thing can become chronic because it's like the brain is insisting, no, this is the way to heal. Don't interfere with me. And we stop interfering and the brain's going, okay, let's get there now. It's fascinating.
And so with wellness, that's the topic for this series. One of the things, I think it could be seen, wellness, as this kind of, and we talked about this in the last episode, mindfulness, and there's all these different applications of wellness.
And wellness is everything is fine. That doesn't mean wellness is everything is fine. It might be in this dynamic disequilibrium, restoring fine.
Yes, and it's directional. So and it's which direction is it?
Not everything is fine, and I don't have any itches or pain or anything in body, mind, and spirit. It's appreciating that wellness is a dynamic disequilibrium that involves, inherent in the nature of wellness, a restoration at times. Because change is the constant.
Yeah.
Think about how often change occurs throughout your day. Things you expected to happen that don't happen. Things you wished that happened didn't happen. Or things that you were completely unexpected. Yay, this is wonderful. Or temperature in the environment around you changes. Homeostasis is restoring or maintaining that stable, steady environment, neurobiologically, but also in body, mind, and spirit, that requires and necessitates change. That's homeostasis. Mm-hmm. So so to think that wellness is everything is just right.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist.
No.
And you may have moments of it, but then something happens.
So it's really
wellness
more a journey.
Is about appreciating and valuing the wisdom of the brain to adjust to change. And that is wellness too. Mm-hmm. And illness is not inherently necessarily the presence of something I don't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The very thing that is something I don't like, an itch, a twitch, a tingle, the burning, etc., and pain, there is productive pain. But to categorically think that all pain means something is ill is just not dealing with the realities, and it's failing to appreciate the process of wellness. So to talk about wellness is to recognize that many things that are in the category that people have put them in, institutions have put them in, professions have put them in, that are indications of illness. To quote a line from George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, it ain't necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so. And to do that is inherently to compromise wellness, ironically. Mm-hmm. There is a wisdom, I like to say, in the brain, and we get to trust that wisdom. It doesn't mean ignoring it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean not exploring it. But it does mean let's not interfere unless that's necessary.
Yeah.
And would support that natural process of homeostasis.
Mm. And so this is so important. It's a little piece that's quite important here in this. I think in the first episode, we talked about wellness being the ground beneath our feet on the path to thriving. And so if we're going to be on that journey, if we're going to be connecting with that ground of wellness, to essentially thrive, that's what we all want, right?
Absolutely.
There is an we kind of need to adjust our thinking about illness.
Yeah, we get to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And recognize that a great deal, like your pain, of what is thought of usually and reactive to often as something is wrong and it is illness, it ain't necessarily so. And it's actually part of that process in the fundamentals of wellness, of restoring it.
And I think as well, Tom, just as we wrap this one up, I think it is, like as we're talking, I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, it is amazing that part of what the reason why we can have wellness is our body, our brain, and our body, and our mind, and our spirit has this great capacity for restoration.
Yes.
Which is homeostasis. It is healing, adjusting to the changes, and they might be minor changes or they might be massive traumas like I experienced, but the point is our body, we should have more trust in that than we do in illness. And I think that the culture, the society that we live in, I can speak for myself, but I've had to change from having more trust in illness, to trusting my body, particularly my brain, because that is the activation of the brain is how homeostasis is occurring in our body, mind, and spirit. So it's trust. In some ways, there's a shift. Would you say this, that on the path to thriving, the ground beneath our feet, which is wellness, that there needs to be a shift in our thinking to trust more in the power of the brain than the power of illness, the fear of illness in our society. If we can shift to that. Now, it's not to say that illness doesn't exist. We know that there are things.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have to adjust. We
also know that the brain can restore well-being in ways that we can't even imagine. I had a session with somebody recently who struggled with Crohn's disease. And at the end of the session, he said, my gut feels great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he
did nothing but observe the involuntary homeostatic activity.
Yeah.
Several people recently, over the past few months, Tourette's, motor, and verbal tics, and they're not there because the brain has a wisdom we don't possess, but we get to access.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really encouraging and hopeful, and something that, if we are on this journey of wellness, which is what we're encouraging us all to be on, including ourselves, this is what we get to partner with.
Yes.
This level of hope.
So wellness is a process. Illness is a condition. But a lot of what we attribute and think of as symptoms of illness are often simply manifestations of restored well-being.
That was a mic drop moment.
Okay.
Although the mic's on the table. But that's amazing. Thanks, Tom. Really encouraging conversation. I can't wait for our next one. So,
let's default to the wisdom.
The wisdom of the brain.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Autonomic Homeostasis Activation Podcast. Join us next time as we continue in our conversations with Tom.
If you're interested in pursuing your own wellness journey, please check out our website, autonomichealing.org.
You can also reach out to Tom at innerworkings.org.